Hey, everybody, welcome. It's me, Legal Vices, and I'm welcoming you here to another spoiler filled, unprofessional, unedited, one take review of 1899, the new maritime, semi maritime related Netflix special. We're doing episode 3 today, which is titled The Fog, and I really need to kind of tighten up these reviews. The review of episode 2 was just about half as long as the episode itself, so we got to try to race through this as quickly as possible, but still not miss any of the interesting details. And like I said, this is totally spoiler filled. It's just pretty much a review of the entire episode. It starts out with somebody dying and struggling in the water, and it turns out it's the Chinese girl that's faking and pretending to be Japanese for some reason. She wakes up from this dream, but just before she wakes up, she hears a female say, "Wake up." And every episode has started out with a dream, and every episode has also awakened from the dream with someone saying, "Wake up." So she wakes up from the dream, and this fake Japanese girl, her kimono has the same symbol that's on everything, this upside down triangle with a line through it. So her mother is sitting at this table watching her daughter, and this Mrs. Wilson, she's kind of this mysterious rich lady that's lurking around. Mrs. Wilson is sitting at a table with her, and the mom is crying, and Mrs. Wilson says that they need to take this opportunity. Oh, they're sitting at a table, by the way, at this point. Mrs. Wilson says that they need to take this tragedy, this delay, whatever, with the ship and turn it into an opportunity. And then she tells the girl and her mother to meet me in my cabin. And you remember from episode 2 that the French guy seemed to have sort of a little bit of a fetish thing going on with the Chinese girl who's pretending to be Japanese. So mom looks at and Mrs. Wilson leaves. The mom looks at the daughter and says, "We never should have come on board." And then it cuts to a scene with the Kerberos towing the Prometheus through the water. The Danish guys, I said they were Dutch for some reason because I was an idiot in the first episode or two. So the Danish guy, Krester is his name. He's looking for his dead sister that died at the end of the second episode. He doesn't know she's dead yet. He's looking for her. But she's in the middle of being autopsied by by this doctor on the ship who doesn't really seem to care much. He looks at her for just a few seconds and said that she seems to have died of natural causes. But at that point, the vessel starts shaking, and then suddenly the vessel is instantly fogged in. Just heavy fog, can't see past the railing of the ship. They can't navigate, and the captain tells Marin, "I need to show you something." And he takes Marin off. And that's when the rest of the crew, they start talking more about their mutiny they were talking about before. They want to go back. They want to get on the voyage. They want to leave the Prometheus and continue on their voyage to America. The captain takes Marin to his cabin and shows him this ribbon he picked up on the Prometheus and said, "This is my daughter's." Even though she died 2 years ago. And then he explains about this vision he had in the second episode about seeing his family. And the captain shows her that there's also a tunnel in his cabin, which, again, at the end of the last episode, he follows this tunnel through this room that leads up into his room. He shows her this tunnel that leads into his cabin, and he says it shouldn't be here. The ship went into the dry dock to be retrofitted for some communication equipment and whatnot, but it seems that they added this tunnel that should not have been there. And he said that there's a similar tunnel on the Prometheus. And then he says that the company seems to be hiding something. And now he wants to go back to the Prometheus and look at the Prometheus's logbooks to see if there's anything in there about what's going on. The Danish guys, they continue still looking for the dead girl. And then Mrs. Wilson, we cut to her talking to the Chinese girl. And suddenly, for some reason, Mrs. Wilson is speaking Chinese to the girl who's pretending to be Japanese. And she tells the girl to undress. And so the girl obeys. She gets undressed. And then Mrs. Wilson says she has to check to see if she's clean. So apparently she is a prostitute. This Chinese girl who's pretending to be a Japanese girl is a prostitute that works for Mrs. Wilson, it seems. But then she does this check, And Mrs. Wilson comes away and says, "Whoa, surprise! You're still a virgin." Um, which is that's interesting because you were supposed to be one of my best girls, and I don't like secrets. But she says we can turn that into an opportunity as well, meaning I guess to get more money for deflowering the virgin. I don't know. Then it cuts again to the crew telling the captain that there's something wrong with the Prometheus, and the captain and Mara they go off to the Prometheus. And then there's more mutiny talk while they row across the small distance to the Prometheus. The chief officer of the vessel, he was the one that at the end of the last episode, started getting the telegram that was just a bunch of up triangles and down triangles in some sort of code. So the chief officer, he opens up this random panel, and when it opens, it has a red light on it in the middle and an up triangle and a down facing triangle. It looks sort of like an elevator up and down button with a light in between it. And then he starts pushing in the up and down triangles in the same sequence that came through the telegraph machine. So that clues us off that the chief officer is in on whatever is the big mystery going on here. So he punches in the telegraph codes, and then somewhere deep within the ship, a big engine noise starts up. And then it cuts to the boy. The boy is talking. He's not talking. He's looking at his pyramid, and he takes his pyramid and he goes under the bed in Mara's room. And it seems, there seems like there's some noise going on in there, and maybe it's a trap door, kind of like under the captain's bed. Master and captain is kind of a term that's used interchangeably in the maritime world, and I usually refer to them as the master of the vessel when I'm writing my legal report. So if I say master, I mean captain. And then it's revealed that Mara has had a miscarriage and can't have any children. I don't know if that'll be important later, but then it cuts back to the Chinese girl's room. The Chinese mom, she's alone. And it turns out she's a whore too. It turns out she was a whore in China. She gets in this argument with the Chinese girl. Turns out her name is Ling Yi. So Ling Yi, she is suddenly has this flashback, and she flashes back to being in this area with somebody else. She has this vision of killing somebody and being thrown overboard. And then the crewman, Yingli, she ran away from her mother and she hid in a box. I forgot to mention that. She runs out on deck and hides in a box. And as soon as the box closes, she has this vision of her apparently killing somebody and being put into a crate with holes in it and thrown overboard of this other ship. And then some crew member opens the actual box that she was hiding in on the shore, and then she cuts back to reality. Her vision ends. And then her mom comes over and takes her, says, we come here, we're going to take you to a better hiding place. So mom takes her to a better hiding place. And then finally, I guess they're done with the autopsy of the girl or whatnot. So the dead girl takes her to her sister to see the body. And then they take the body down into third class where all of the Danish people are. Then the Spanish guy. The Spanish guy who is either the lover or employer or both of the Portuguese guy who's pretending to be a priest. The Spanish guy meets the Danish kid who they've kind of been having this little sexual tension filled scenes together. He meets the Danish kid at this gate, and then they kind of proceed to give each other hand jobs. Then it cuts away from that. The captain finds another trap door in the Prometheus's captain's cabin, exactly the same way it was on his own ship. And then he sends Mara down. Well, Mara goes down in there, and it's just this black tiled space. It's this black tiled room. No explanation. Then it cuts back to Mara's cabin, where the boy climbs out from under the bed. And it turns out he has a pyramid still in his hand. And there's a couple of knocks on the door. And then a little bug comes under the door. This bug has been coming under the door quite a bit. This bug, there's something about this bug. Don't know what it is yet. The bug is just crawling around. So the bug comes under the door. and the door is unlocked, and then this mysterious Daniel Solace, who climbed out of the ocean in previous episodes and has been just kind of lurking around being really mysterious, he walks in and he asks the boy, "Did you find it?" And the boy shakes his head. Then it turns out that we get a little bit of an explanation. This triangle with a line through it is the company that owns the ship's symbol. That's their logo, I guess. And it's so that kind of explains why it's on the carpet, on the cabin doors and whatnot. But it still doesn't explain why it's on the back of a kimono, why it's on letters from people that are supposedly dead. It's kind of strange. But now at least we know that that is the company's symbol, and the company has changed things on the ship apparently. And then it cuts over to Oleg. If you don't, Oleg is the is one of the Polish crewmen, and he runs into he was the one that opened the box and found Ling Yi to take her to a safe place. They go into kind of a place that's it's one of the sub decks, I guess. It's still on deck, but it's where you can access the lifeboat and other parts of the ship. And then suddenly the fog rolls into the room full force, and that triggers another memory from Ying Li. And it turns out that Ying Li is sitting with this other girl who has this robe that Ling Yi was wearing. This other girl had this robe and was showing it to her, and how beautiful and how pretty it was. And she said, "Oh, I'm going to America." And the girl she drinks this tea, and I guess this other girl was supposed to be Mrs. Wilson's prostitute that was going to go to America and make her lots of money. But she drinks this tea and then she starts to die. And Ying Li said it was an accident. She'd seen her mother give this tea to some customers before, and she just wanted this other girl to pass out and fall asleep so that she could take this other girl's place and go to America. But it turns out, I guess she gave her a little too much, and this other prostitute girl died. And then Ying Li says, "Why is this happening again? Please wake up this time," as she's shaking the girl. So that's kind of weird. Why is this happening again? Please wake up this time. And then Ling Yi wakes up and she starts crying and she starts hugging on Oleg for comfort. Then it cuts back to Crester, the Danish boy, who I guess his handy is finished. He comes back and sees his sister's body, and then he freaks out. And then it cuts to a scene where one of the crewmen is walking down the hallway and he finds 3 more bodies. So now it's not just one girl that's dead. Now there's at least 4 people dead. Then it cuts over to the Prometheus again. And on the Prometheus, there's a panel. They open this panel, this random panel, and there's some sort of electronic system in it. I mean, it's a full-on big circuit board thing, like an old style circuit board with tubes and whatnot and moving parts. And the captain says, "Hey, there's one of these on the Kerberos as well, but it's never worked." And Mara thinks that the passengers may have been burned in the furnaces, so they go to check the furnaces. And they say, "You can search through the ashes and see if you can find some bone parts or teeth or anything like that." But while the captain is digging through the furnace he's looking through, he finds a partly burned crew list and stuffs it in his pocket and doesn't tell Mara that he found this crew list. Then it cuts back to the ship where there's the French guy. There's a French guy and a French woman on their honeymoon. Lucien is the French guy's name. They don't seem to have the greatest relationship. And then Lucien had this kind of fetishy thing for the Chinese girl. So Lucien, he's sitting at his desk and his hand starts shaking a little bit. And he seems to take some sort of medicine. And it also, the inside of his desk, it shows that he also has an envelope. He has an envelope like the one that Captain and Mara have from their relatives or whatever. So everybody seems to have this envelope that they're not telling each other about. And then Lucien goes to meet Ying Li at Mrs. Wilson's room. Mrs. Wilson takes money from Lucien, and it turns out she puts the money in her desk, and she has one of these mysterious envelopes as well. So far, all of the prime characters we've met in any depth, they all have this particular envelope that has the ship's logo on the back of it, but it's reportedly from someone that they know or someone they love or a family member that I guess they're all looking for. It's kind of weird. Haven't figured out the envelope yet. Then it cuts to Lucian and Yingli. She starts to get undressed. He says, "No, no, 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 no. That's not what I want. I don't." He doesn't want sex. He just says, "Just wait a minute," and then he has a full-on epileptic seizure. And it cuts the scene, and then they cuts to the crew, where the crew are mentioning that there's 3 crewmen that are dead. So there's the girl, the 3 passengers they found on the floor, and 3 crewmen are dead, and nobody knows why. And that's when the crew tells the chief officer, "You have to take command of this ship. The captain, he's out of his mind. We need to get out of here. You have to take command." And the chief officer says, "Nope, we're going to follow the captain's orders." And that's when Franz is one of the main crewmen. He's a big guy. He just full on starts the mutiny right then and there. Oleg is in the room when he tries to start. Oleg tries to run away. He gets caught. He gets beat up and stuffed in a room with the stowaway, with the black guy who is the stowaway. And if you may recall, his name was Jerome. So Oleg gets put in a room with Jerome, the stowaway black guy, who speaks French for some odd reason. And then it goes to the cuts to the Portuguese guy, the guy who is faking being a priest, and he says that he killed a man and is wearing his clothes. So apparently he's also killed a man. You remember Ying Li? She killed a guy, and the Portuguese guy, apparently he killed a guy in the past and is wearing he killed a priest apparently. So now he's got the priest's clothes on, and then the Spanish lover guy, he says, "Well, I can't change my nature. I am who I am." It may be talking about their little jealousy thing they were having, because the fake priest, the Portuguese fake priest guy, was jealous that Spanish guy was flirting with Crester, the Danish guy. But then the fake priest Portuguese guy, let's call him Portuguese guy. I'm not sure what his name is. I can't remember what his name is. He says he's going to go warn the captain about the oncoming mutiny. So it cuts back to the captain's room. The captain is looking at the Prometheus passenger list. And when he's looking at the Prometheus passenger list, he sees the name Mara Franklin on the list. So Mara apparently is one of the passengers that was supposed to be on the Prometheus that disappeared 4 months before this. Now things are starting to get weird. Then there's also the mysterious Daniel Solis that climbed up out of the ocean, as we mentioned a little while ago. He runs into Mara on the deck, and he says that this fog is strange. It's almost like they don't want us to continue in this direction. And he makes some really mysterious comments. And then Daniel looks at Mara kind of weirdly and says that he's lost someone in his life. And then it cuts to more scenes of the crew and the Danish passengers mutinying. And then it cuts to Daniel. It cuts to Daniel, who does some weird stuff. Daniel has like this little square pad, and I'm sure you've seen these little games like where there's one square. It's a picture that's mixed up, and there's like one square space that's empty. So you have to slide the pieces around until you get them in the proper order to complete the picture. It was a device exactly like that, with a bunch of sliding squares and one empty space. So he's sliding the triangle, and it just has triangles on them, up triangles and down pointing triangles. He arranges them all in a certain order on this little pad, and then the screen cuts to this panel, this circuit board panel that's behind the place, and it lights up, starts sparking. It kicks into motion this thing that supposedly never worked. So once he gets the pattern, it starts this machine, and then the ship teleports or something. The Kerberos just vanishes. All the fog gets sucked in, and it vanishes or teleports or does something. And then it just leaves the Prometheus floating all by itself, drifting all by itself in the ocean. So the Kerberos has vanished. The Prometheus is sailing all by itself, and then Killing Moon by Echo and the Bunnymen start playing. And that's the one cool thing about this is the ending. They always have some really good songs play for the closing credit. But so what's going on here? We found out that everybody has one of these letters. The ship teleports. There's something going on with this panel. The boy is freaking everybody out, and they've started a mutiny. That's where we are today at the end of episode 3 of our spoiler-filled, unprofessional, unedited, one-take review of 1899. And again, I tried to make this one shorter, but it went about a minute longer than episode 3. than episode 2. Let's see if we can make episode 4 review a little shorter than these episodes. Until then, take care. Enjoy your legal vices. We'll be back for more 1899 reviews. Bye now.